when Betty and Barney Hill described an incredible series of events involving an alien spacecraft they allegedly encountered on a lonely mountain road in New Hampshire.
We saw what we thought was a new star in the sky, and then there were beeping sounds, and then for some unexplained reason, my husband Barney and I were the first persons on this planet to be abducted by astronauts from another solar system.
The Hills filed a report in 1961, but the information about the abduction didn't come out until 1965 when they went under hypnosis. But under hypnosis, they discovered that they had been taken into the ship and some kinds of experiments had been done on them.
They put me on the table and tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel. He said it was a pregnancy test.
After the Hill case, ufologists started paying more attention to reports of alien contact and reports of abduction. The next big case was in the early 70s, and that was in Pascagoula, Mississippi.
In 1973, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker reported to local authorities that while night fishing on the banks of the Pascagoula River, they had been taken aboard an alien spacecraft and examined by non-human creatures.
All of a sudden, one end of it just opened up, and two of them reached for my arms, and immediately just lifted me into the vehicle or the craft or whatever you want to call it.
It was kind of like a humming noise. Just one of them made it like hum, just like it.
Initially, their bizarre and detailed account was dismissed as a hoax.
Police there, the local police department, put them into a private room by themselves and said, "You boys just wait here, and we've got some work to do, and you can tell us our stories, you know, later as well." And they had a listening device in the room, and they listened to them talking privately to themselves. Well, instead of saying, "Oh, we got them now, you know, we're going to make a lot of money off of this deal," what they did was they got down on their knees and they prayed, because these people were absolutely honest and completely straight.
The 1975 case of Travis Walton drew national attention as one of the first reported abductions to take place in front of witnesses.
Travis Walton was taken not exactly in full view of 6 other witnesses, but close to it. They all saw a UFO. They saw it come in close proximity to Travis, and they saw a light emanating from it, and they saw Travis being hit by the light and falling over, and then they ran. When they came back about 15 minutes later, he was gone, and gone for the next 5 days.
They were about 5 foot tall, no hair, real white skin, small features except for large eyes.
2 years after the Walton case, film director Steven Spielberg distilled various eyewitness descriptions to create the big-eyed, benign aliens of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and later, E.T. In 1987, 2 popular and highly controversial books, Whitley Strieber's Communion and Bud Hopkins' Intruders, detailed case studies of abduction experiences and forever embedded the phenomenon into mainstream America. But the question remains, why is this happening now?
We should not be surprised that UFOs and alien abduction experiences are such a dominant part of our culture now. Look at what's going on in society, right? Since the 1950s, we've achieved jet power, rockets, we've put satellites into orbit. Science fiction has become a legitimate genre of literature, and TV shows, Star Trek, movies, Star Wars, and so on. So all this idea about aliens and spacecraft and so on, it is part of our culture.
The modern concept of the UFO is a 20th century phenomenon, but the concept of the alien has been with us throughout much of human history.
DVD ドーン来ました。簡単おうちシアター
DVD プロジェクター
ドリームよドーンエプソン
初めての事故だったから慌てたわよ。すぐにソニー損保に電話したんだけど、次はこうしてくださいって的確に指示をくれて、本当お助かり。そしたら昨日事故解決までのスケジュールと担当者の写真入りのハガキが届いたのよ。
ソニー損保の事故解決に多くのお客様から高い評価をいただいています。
この前ね、よかった温泉行ったんだけど、帰り道に車が故障しちゃって、
そう動かなくなっちゃって。
でね、私ソニー損保に入ってるんだけど、電話したらすぐ取りに来てくれて、帰れないからホテルの手配もしてくれて、
それにホテル代も帰りの交通費も戻ってきたんだよね。
ただってこと？
ソニー損保ならお車のトラブルの際にも無料で駆けつけます。しかも走行距離が少ない方ほど得をする合理的な自動車保険です。年間1万1000キロ以下なら今すぐお見積もりを。ソニー損保。
5月のフォックスはもう一つのダヴィンチコード日本初上陸。映画を超える壮大なスケールで送る歴史サスペンス、黙示録神の暗号を解く。リッチなイケメンジャックのハートを射止めるため繰り広げられる壮絶サバイバル、超ミリオネアジャングル版アウトバックジャック。若手人気俳優アシュトン・カッチャーやトファー・グレースが大暴れ。ザットセブンティーズショーシーズン3。
We are not alone. We haven't been alone for a very long time, and I find it very interesting how a lot of people kind of hide that fact.
I think if you do the proper research, you'll find that these stories began surfacing long before pop culture had any kind of awareness about them.
Going back even to the Bible, there's a story of Ezekiel. Ezekiel has essentially a UFO encounter. He sees a wheel in the air, a fiery light, an orange flame. Out of the fire come four creatures that are described as having four faces each and wings. And then in 1561, in I believe it was in Nuremberg, Germany, there were reports of seeing spherical objects in the sky, black, red, and white, at sunrise, hovering for at least an hour and combating with each other.
Just as it seems that UFOs have always hovered above us, so it seems that the alien has also walked among us, in one strange form or another. Details from documented accounts of the massive witch hunts that tore through Europe and the New World in the 1500s and 1600s bear striking similarities to many of today's abduction scenarios.
I remember them feeling like they were sitting on my chest, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe.
One of the things that witches were consistently said to do was to ride people. Witch riding usually involved the witch coming into their room, paralyzing them, and sitting on them. Sometimes, according to the stories, they were then ridden out of the house, maybe out through the window or ridden around the countryside.
It's kind of strange that the window that I was floated through at the age of 16 is about 2 feet away on the same wall as the window that I was floated through when I was 8.
And myth and folklore throughout history are filled with terrifying tales of bizarre, half-human creatures and babies being abducted in the dark of night.
Up until the beginning of the modern period, many folk tales and fairy tales involve stories of fairies and elves trying to steal babies. For example, we know in Rumpelstiltskin that he is after the baby. That's what he asks for in exchange for helping spin the straw into gold. The Changeling is a story that involves taking the real human baby and replacing it with some kind of hybrid.
From my perspective, it's obvious that this is a culturally driven phenomenon. For example, in the 16th and 17th centuries, people believed they were abducted and sexually abused by demons. In the 19th century, people believed that they were abducted and often sexually abused by ghosts, spirits. In the 20th century, we have these people being abducted by not demons, not ghosts, because those were popular then. What's popular for us is aliens from other planets.
Author Joe Nickel has illustrated the evolution of the contemporary alien image and its correlation with cultural changes throughout history.
We have the little green men of 47, the 1950s, the sort of beautiful Adam and Eve-like creatures. They look almost biblical, bathed in light, very radiant and beautiful. Various robotic creatures. Strange little hairy dwarfs were a phenomenon in the 1954 period. Lots of little hairy dwarfs in 1954, and really not before and not since, but lots of them in 54. Goblin-like creatures in 1958. And again, now I'm taking these from real reports and not relying any on any science fiction. All these are cases that real people have really reported, be they true, be they not.
The sort of the next phase is the idea of the benignly superior alien. They're physically frail, they're tinier, they don't have a lot of muscles, they have large heads, they're super intelligent, very large brains, they have mental telepathy, they're able to control people with their minds, so they're superior beings who have some kind of inimical purpose. They're going to alter the human race, and they're going to guide our evolution, either negatively or positively.
The small grays, who are American aliens, as I think of them, tend to have won out, maybe because of Steven Spielberg and other filmmakers in the X-Files and so on. But there are lots of different kinds of aliens who have been spotted around Europe. The Dutch tend to see orange aliens. The English tend to see Nordics, these tall Robert Redford kind of aliens that smell like cinnamon, which I think is a very nice tea time kind of touch.
Whatever the alien experience might be, the interpretation of that experience may be culturally determined.
Sometimes people will say, well, I can't be making this up because I've never read any science fiction and I don't watch the X-Files and I don't want to go on television. I'm embarrassed. I would be disgraced professionally if people knew this. But that's not really the issue. The issue is how much cultural information they've absorbed unconsciously and how convinced they've become that a whole group of symptoms that they can't explain to their satisfaction are explained by this narrative of the space visit and the abduction and the scientific or sexual experiments.
Are today's tales of alien abduction merely the latest in a long line of cultural metaphors? Perhaps. But for the abductees, these experiences are very real, not the stuff of fairy tales or myths. But given the lack of physical evidence, how can science explain these fantastic and very sincere accounts? One explanation may lie not in the outer world of extraterrestrials, but in the inner recesses of the human mind.
In my opinion, rather than science saying, well, if we can't explain it or if it doesn't fit within our paradigms of what we consider reality, then it doesn't exist. What I think science needs to do as a tool is expand its parameters.
The inability to prove the truth of UFOs or abduction one way or the other probably explains some of mainstream science opposition to it. Mainstream science wants things that it can prove in a laboratory under controlled conditions, and this doesn't happen with abduction.
Despite thousands of documented first-hand accounts of alien abduction, to date, not one piece of undisputed hard evidence exists to support the claims.
There are two ways in which science might come to answers about the abduction experiences. One is that the aliens will make themselves absolutely obvious. We'll have in our labs some kind of artifact from another planet or something, and we'll have to confront, here's another life form communicating with us. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? The other possibility is that we'll simply understand a lot more about the mind.
Could the phenomena of alien abduction somehow be connected with inner space and not outer space? The mind and not the galaxy? For more than 5 decades, researchers at the Stanford Sleep Disorder Clinic in Palo Alto, California, have been studying the effects of sleep patterns on the human psyche. Recently, scientists have uncovered some intriguing correlations between abduction experiences and a little-known disorder called sleep paralysis.
In sleep paralysis, a person would find themselves, as they're falling asleep or waking up, find themselves suddenly unable to move. They would be aware of their environment, they would feel that they're awake, but they're in a completely limp paralysis. It's very frightening.
I was paralyzed in bed. Many people talk about feeling paralyzed, they can't move. And I started literally screaming in my mind.
Janet Frank has suffered from sleep paralysis for more than 25 years. Her symptoms are typical of those afflicted with the condition.
When I would go to sleep, and every time I would go to sleep, I would become paralyzed. My mind was awake and active, but my body would just, it was like I was dying. And the sense that I got was that I was being buried alive.
Sleep paralysis occurs during the phase of sleep known as REM, a dreamlike state when the mind is most vulnerable to suggestion.
The sleep paralysis can usually accompany what's called hypnagogic hallucinations or dream fragmentation. And with that, sometimes there are reports of people seeing strangers in the room or hearing things in the room that aren't theirs.
Scientists have known about sleep paralysis to some extent for close to 100 years. They haven't known very much about it until the modern era of sleep research within the last couple of decades.
While researching the abduction scenario, Professor David Hufford has encountered numerous explanations for the supernatural experiences.
What's being explained in each case, though, is clearly very much the same thing. Waking up, unable to move, with something strange in the room with you that often presses on people.
I remember being paralyzed and unable to move.
The next thing I know is I just was so scared, and I didn't know why, that I just was trembling. I was like this.
And I've woken up with the feeling that they weren't necessarily in my room, but somewhere in the house.
And then they did a they do like a sexual thing. They collected sperm and then they took me back.
It's very common in abduction experiences to have some kind of sexual content. Now, during REM sleep, dreaming sleep, there is typically a lot of sexual arousal. If you wake up, as in sleep paralysis, you wake up still half in REM sleep, you've still got that sexual arousal. Now, imagine you've got the classic sleep paralysis syndrome. You've got the sense of presence, you know, feeling there's something or somebody lurking there. You've got this strange feeling that something's shaking on the bed or whatever. You've got sexual arousal, you know? It's not a very big step to think, my God, it's an alien and it wants my eggs.
It seems to me that the abduction thing, whatever it is complex. Sleep paralysis is not an explanation for it, but it can't be ignored because so frequently the idea that people have been abducted comes to them first because of an experience that at the very least is indistinguishable from sleep paralysis.
While sleep paralysis offers one possible explanation for this abduction experience, other sleep disorders may also provide answers. During her research, Dr. Susan Blackmore has encountered one case with an uncanny connection between classic abduction symptoms and another common sleep disorder.
One of the major sleep disorders is narcolepsy, and this is a condition in which you have a terrible tendency just to fall asleep in the middle of the day. I've been in touch with one narcoleptic who's had the most extraordinary experiences over many, many years. He lives in Devon, and one day he was going along the A38, main road in Devon, and this spaceship came, and landed in front of him. And that was the beginning of years of being abducted. He has a friend who is an alien called Jordai. This is Jordai here. And he's painted, Mr. Howard has painted many, many pictures of Jordai, of his family, of where he lives, of the gardens that he goes to on the planet where Jordai lives. And he has even undergone rather unpleasant experiences of being, having operations done on him. Now, we know that Mr. Howard is a narcoleptic, and we know these episodes of abduction happen during his narcoleptic periods, and he's quite clear and cogent about it himself. He knows that the aliens don't really exist, and yet they're his friends. They're an important part of his life. He bases all this art on them. And I think this shows the power of something which is absolutely real to somebody, even though they know that it's not really a planet out there.
Granddad was a sheep cocky and Dad was a sheep cocky, and I guess I'm a sheep cocky. I live here because I belong here, I guess, and it is good sheep country. I know just about every rock on it. I think I've turned most of them upside down now to have a look at them. And this country is the most unique patch of ground that you'd ever find anywhere. This is where the dinosaurs were. When I first come here, I found a small piece of dinosaur bone. It's about that long, and it was 10 years later before I found another thing. And all we had was this little old 50 horsepower tractor, and then we went and we dug, and we found the remains of a huge, huge dinosaur. What we've got here, it's about 10% of what we've dug so far, and what we've dug so far is about 1% of what we've got around. It's absolutely amazing. We haven't even scratched the surface. And now we know Australia has got dinosaurs, and there's a lot of them, and I'm passionate about seeing these things come to light so that people all over the world can come and see them. It's pretty fascinating, and I think it tells us something too. You know, you can go back and look at these animals that lived 95 million years ago, and they're gone. And one day, probably mankind might be the same. We're not as big and grand as we think we are. I'll always be a farmer. I'll always be a sheep cocky, but I think the dinosaurs are probably the most exciting and the most interesting part of my life.
The most important moment of my life?
Yes.
I don't know.
Many of our teachers are disloyals.
But every 6 minutes in this country, a woman's raped.
You seem to retreat inside authority whenever you feel lonely.
Just teach. 私たちは絶対に教えることを諦めない。
You are the future.
学園ドラマの傑作「ボストンパブリック」毎週日曜夜10時放送。
特殊な能力を持つ主人公トゥルー。
また声を聞いたの。
声ってのはつまり
助けて。
トゥルーに与えられた使命、それは生きたいと望む人たちの死を未然に防ぐこと。生死に向き合う新感覚ミステリー「トゥルーコーリング」月曜夜9時吹き替え版、金曜夜9時字幕版放送。
And once you have undergone these experiences, there's no doubt in your mind that what you've seen and what you've experienced is real.
What accounts for the crystal clarity of many of these abductees' memories? Is it possible that the subconscious mind can be manipulating the conscious in such a bizarre manner? Some believe that understanding how memory works might be one of the keys to unlocking the truth about these alien abduction encounters. And research has proven that memory is far more malleable than we care to believe.
Many people think that our memories are like tape recorders, that what happens is somehow kind of all stored in the brain. It isn't like that at all. We have these interacting networks of neurons which are all shifting every time something happens. And okay, you store information about the experiences that you have, but it's always being overlaid and changed by what happens next. So in our ordinary memories, they're always being updated.
This continual updating process is at the center of a phenomenon known as false memory syndrome.
False memory syndrome is quite important to alien abductions, although I don't think it necessarily plays a role in every case. I think what happens is people have some kind of experience, whether it's sleep paralysis or some hallucination or some odd experience that they can't understand. And then when they start to talk about it and tell other people, they inevitably, because they're using language, they put words to it. And they describe, well, it was kind of like, well, there was something lurking in the room, and well, it was like, you know. And the more you start to describe something, the more you then remember your description. And if someone says, well, did it have eyes? What were they like? You know, and you start to describe that, then next time you tell it, that becomes your memory. And the more often you tell the story, the more it feels real to you. That's what we mean by false memory. You've elaborated it yourself and you've come to believe the details were all true.
Everything's white and I can't see anything. It's all white. And he's holding my hand.
Further complicating the debate over the inner versus outer space explanations for the abduction experience is the controversy over the use of hypnosis therapy. Many skeptics believe that the process itself can create false memories of an abduction experience.
They want their sample.
Hypnosis is a well-recognized tool now by both the psychological and psychiatric associations. It has been used for many years in very beneficial ways in alleviating some psychosomatic illnesses or to control pain. So you can have people who have allergies, people who have asthma. You can even influence people who are severely burned just by the use of hypnosis. So there is a clear link in hypnosis between how the mind influences the body. Unfortunately, it's also hypnosis that often finds itself in the center of all kinds of new beliefs and phenomena, and the abduction is one.
I work with people who have had abduction experiences. As a certified hypnotherapist, I take them back to the particular time and place when they have had a sighting and interacted with occupants of a UFO.
My baby.
So as I take them back in hypnotic regression, we see if there is anything in the subconscious mind that is going to be brought forward to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
He's crying. I don't know what to do. What do I do?
Take a deep breath now. Let's freeze it.
It can happen with abductees that they turn up to be hypnotized with a very vague memory of something that's happened to them.
What's happening?
Perhaps on waking in the morning or perhaps on the verge of sleep.
What's happening?
So they took it from me.
And they don't know what it is and it's disturbed them in some way. And they then are hypnotized and asked to elaborate.
You're gonna put something inside of me to see if I can have a baby.
The problem is, if you then come back next week and do the same thing again, and then again.
You remember doing that before?
What started off in your own mind as being clearly a fantasy under hypnosis becomes more and more convincing.
I didn't remember that before.
Until in the end, you, the hypnotic subject, are absolutely convinced that those things really happened to you. That's the way memory works.
Well, it's very similar to the time that they took that triangular-shaped rod and they jabbed it into my stomach. That really hurt a lot.
But if the explanation for this abduction experience is in fact internal and not external, then what can explain the physical scars allegedly left by the abductors? Jesse Long is not alone when he claims to have physical marks and scars as a result of alien experiments.
And then they put a tube down my throat and sucked all of it out as much as they could through my mouth.
These people did not go to bed with these marks. These came up overnight. And sometimes they last for several days or weeks, and sometimes they disappear that same day. So I always urge my clients to take pictures of these things, and I present it in my talk.
I have had bruises many times. I've had bruises on the arms where the only way, and no one else touched me, the only way you could understand it could be as if somebody was moving you around.
I had a raised area right in here, and in the inside of it I had a triangle of three injection points, and then I had injection points leading up my arm here.
As with so many aspects of this controversy, there are different explanations for these marks. While many alleged abductees point to their physical marks as proof that their experiences are real, skeptics among the scientific community offer another explanation.
The mind can create physical reality for the body. In deep stages of hypnosis, you could be convinced that a pencil was a hot poker and it would raise a blister. You could believe strongly that you had stigmata on your hands, look down and see that indeed you did have them, and you might even have blood coming from them. The point being that if you believe in a reality sufficiently, it is possible for the conscious mind to override the unconscious and cause a number of physical effects.
One of them is a little bit taller than the rest of them, and he has a coat on. He's very mean.
They're not making this up, and they're not fantasizing, and they're not dreaming. Something in their past happened to them that they cannot explain, they don't understand.
I'm feeling cold again.
And these skeptics who like to generalize everything, that they're all dreaming, and it's all sleep paralysis, and it's all fantasy. I wonder how many cases they've studied.
全米で話題沸騰。あのダ・ヴィンチのミステリーを超える衝撃の発見。1700年の眠りから覚めたユダの福音書は語る。ユダは裏切り者ではなかった。イエスと交わされた密約とは。ナショナルジオグラフィック日本版5月号緊急出版ユダの福音書を終え、どちらも好評発売中。
サンフランシスコの街が眠りにつく頃、静かに動き出す異常犯罪の影。捜査官たちに残されたもの。
Oh my God.
まるでパズルのように複雑に仕組まれた手がかり。
SFPD, open the door.
その全てを解かない限り事件解決はありえない。異常犯罪捜査班 SFPD 毎週金曜夜10時放送。
元 FBI 捜査官フランク・ブラック。
何が見える？犯人の見るものが見えてくる。人間の心の最も暗い部分に触れるんだ。
X ファイルのクリス・カーターが放つサイコサスペンス。難事件に立ち向かう闇の組織を描いた超大作。
これは才能で呪いでもある。
ミレニアム、日曜夜12時吹き替え版、月曜11時字幕版放送。
J スポーツ J スポーツスタジアム2006。5月は注目のカード目白押しの交流戦を完全中継。リクエストにお応えしてライブ中継が実現。21日間のサバイバルサイクルロードレースジロデイタリア。アメリカンスポーツ満載 MLB、 そしてプレイオフ突入 NBA、 NHL をオンエア。 J スポーツ番組視聴に関するお問い合わせはご覧のカスタマーセンターまで。
My view is that there is enough people in the world that have seen things that have gone on that just out of just normal curiosity, we should investigate it, find out what it is. Maybe it's some new energy coming from the ground, I don't know. But I'm saying that's my attitude, that we should look at it.
In the debate over the validity of the alien abduction experience, the road often leads back to UFOs. And if the existence of UFOs can be explained away as a natural terrestrial phenomena, then there may be other, more down-to-earth explanations for the abduction experience as well. Extraterrestrial research led Paul Devereaux to a rare physical phenomenon known as luminous lights, light displays that could easily be misinterpreted as a UFO or alien visitation experience.
It seems to me that they are an exotic geophysical phenomenon of some kind. The Earth just rises and falls, stretches and squeezes itself. And most of the time, this is just a very bland sea of background energy, just in the way that you can have a breeze on a summer afternoon over a vast area. But every so often, because of certain circumstances, these forces get cramped together very tightly, highly focused, like a tornado. Only here we're talking about a tornado of electromagnetic energy. something, and it'll produce a luminosity, it will produce a light. I give them the nickname Earth lights. They're probably a plasma type phenomenon, a sort of ionized gas, and they probably hover on the very edge of physical manifestation.
Could there be a link between this earthly explanation for the sightings of UFOs and the powers of the human mind? Could this explain the abduction experience? A possible answer to these questions may emerge from a laboratory at Laurentian University in Ontario, Canada. Here, a direct link has been established between luminous lights, UFO sightings, and earthquake activity. Dr. Michael Persinger, professor of neuroscience and psychology.
We entered the distribution in space and time of luminous events into a computer. And what we found, or what nature told us, was that luminous displays were tied to earthquake activity. Areas in which there were luminous displays, called UFO reports now, last century odd luminosities or airship invasions, were all within an area around earthquakes.
These earthquake-related luminous displays may help explain a UFO sighting. But what do electrical charges in the Earth's atmosphere have to do with alien abductions from the bedroom?
The reason they have something in common is because a similar portion of the brain is involved with both kinds of phenomena.
Earth activity can actually have an effect on the brain activity of certain individuals.
At first thought, the idea that an earthquake can produce electromagnetic fields which can influence the brain and produce all kinds of experiences may seem somewhat unusual. But the critical feature is to understand how the brain works. The brain operates as an electromagnetic matrix. Basically, all of your experiences right now, consciousness itself, is the recreation every 20 milliseconds or so of this massive cortical field. If you change the electromagnetic characteristics of the brain, you change experience.
Dr. Persinger and his staff set up a research experiment to study this theory.
We placed a helmet on this person's head. Within the helmet are 4 sets of solenoids. These are little devices that generate magnetic fields.
By duplicating naturally occurring electromagnetic pulses in the controlled environment of his laboratory, Persinger has created various hallucinatory responses in volunteer subjects.
And we can see here some nice activity. She's just been aroused over something.
Many of these responses are indistinguishable from classic abduction symptoms.
If you apply, for example, a pulsed field over the right temporal limbic region of the average female, they will experience apprehension and a sense of presence on the left side. And following that, you could have the amnesia, the stimulations of dreaminess, the tingling sensations, the feelings of floating, maybe even being uplifted. And if the current is intense enough, even unconsciousness.
There was definitely a lot of tingling through my body. I saw purple, almost clouds, and faces emerging from behind them.
Now, some people have very labile temporal lobes. That means unstable, always firing a lot, always up and down kind of temporal lobes. They tend to be more artistic people with more imagination, more likely to have hallucinations, more likely to have mystical experiences, while other people have very stable temporal lobes. They're less likely to have these strange experiences. They're less likely to be artists and composers and what have you.
So we have been looking quite closely at the cognitive makeup of these people. And there are a few common points between them. One of them is their ability to imagine, their ability to have a rich fantasy life, so that when they create an image, particularly under hypnosis, for example, this image becomes extremely intense, vivid, and charged with emotions, so that the image itself confuses them as to its reality.
But some believe that the abduction experience may be an encounter with an alternate reality, a world that would expand our definition of reality into another dimension.
Maybe when we go into other states of consciousness, it's like turning the dial on a radio and we're moving to another station. Maybe we're moving into another level of the universe and we're picking up other traffic, other information. And then when you move out of that state of consciousness, you focus back in on the home signal that we call normal consciousness.
This alternate realm is visible only rarely, and memories of this alternate world are filtered through our cultural preconceptions. Where an inhabitant of the 16th century would see witches, we see aliens. The truth may in fact be more than our minds, conscious or otherwise, can handle.
This is not a dream, and yet it's not a physical experience either. It's somewhere in between.
I don't think it's aliens from another planet. I think it's maybe what you would call interdimensional beings.
The idea of other dimensions is always a possibility, but they have to be defined in such a way that they can be refutable or testable. If something is implicitly defined as invisible, infinite, non-physical, then for all practical purposes it's another God concept and you can't refute it or support it. I mean, my favorite example is that I think all of this is being created by non-physical, invisible pink elephants. Now, you may not like that particular theory, but prove they're not there.
The dispute over the existence of alternate realities is indicative of the larger debate surrounding the abduction phenomenon. On one side, there are the alleged abductees and their therapists who claim the experiences are real, and on the other side, the scientific community bound by the burden of proof.
The problem with science is it's necessarily a conservative field. You cannot accept simply on someone's say-so that a particular phenomena occurred. Carl Sagan said this well once. He said, extraordinary truths require extraordinary evidence. If you're going to give me an extraordinary truth and ask me to accept that, then you'd better have good means to persuade me that it is indeed the case.
If this extraordinary evidence of alien beings can be found, this may be the place where it will happen. For 40 years, a group of dedicated scientists have taken the search for the ET into their own hands.
There's a certain hopefulness that we're not alone in the universe. It's one of the things that makes Star Trek and other science fiction so exciting, is that wouldn't it be wonderful to meet another civilization?
How likely is it that intelligent life exists?
There are surely billions of other stars just in our galaxy that have planets. And how many of those planets will cook up life? Well, we don't know, but at least one in our solar system did, and it looks like Mars may have as well. If it turns out that, in fact, there was once life on Mars, then I think the number of planets with life in our galaxy surely tallies in the billions.
While some are convinced the alien has already arrived, astronomers work diligently toward the day when a more verifiable contact will be made. They believe that this first contact might be channeled through the sensitive ears of high-powered satellite dishes like these, operated by the organization known as SETI. They have been listening for radio waves since 1959.
Well, why radio? Well, that just derives from some elementary physics and astronomy. It turns out that radio waves can easily go from one star to the next without interference by the interstellar gas and dust that sort of permeates the galaxy. And it travels at the speed of light. It's the fastest communication mode we know about. Radio gives you a lot of bang for buck. The message will get through, it gets there quickly, and it's relatively inexpensive to do.
For over 40 years, SETI astronomers have been in the business of listening for the sounds of intelligent life. So far, no alien signals have been identified.
The galaxy is a big place, and that's why we have built huge radio telescopes to listen for the signal. But we don't know literally what signal to listen for or what channel to listen to, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface. There's been a project that went on for 5 years systematically listening for 1 million different frequencies at the same time for a signal from the heavens, and they didn't find anything. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it's very difficult to find.
But once we do find the alien, or the alien finds us, how will we react?
I really don't think we can fully imagine what it would mean to have that barrier finally broken down and say, yeah, something else is here. that creates an entirely different worldview. And for many people it would be shattering, for some it would be exhilarating, but for all it will mean great change.
The thing that I think people should keep in mind is that we don't know what is real. Just because I may not have been actually physically taken from my room doesn't mean it didn't happen. And just because I may have actually been physically taken from my room doesn't mean it happened.
For the alleged abductee, the alien encounter has already been a complex and life-altering experience. No matter what point of view one takes about what has occurred, we are still left with questions. Why these experiences? And what do they mean?
One of the theories about why the aliens are here is that they're an advanced race who has lost something, who has given up something, namely their ability to feel. So the idea is that the aliens are here to capture human feelings, human emotions. Now, that might express some of our own anxieties in a technocratic world where we're all so busy that we don't have time to feel.
Alien abductions seem to me to be completely explicable as the kind of phenomenon that would happen at the end of a millennium. Okay, we're waiting for some transforming experience. We're in a state of anxiety, and this gives us something to focus on.
More than 30 years have passed since Barney and Betty Hill reported the first abduction story. And for just as long, discussion surrounding the abduction scenario has remained heated and controversial. Some skeptics see the phenomenon as only a quick-fix solution to a complex and changing world, in some cases with tragic consequences.
No matter how much scientific evidence there is to contradict their basic stories, there will always be some people who will continue to believe and who will continue to think that there's a conspiracy to hide the evidence or destroy it or whatever. And so we have to develop a way to discriminate between rumor and evidence. We can't depend on stories because the stories are out there. They're overwhelming, and some of them sound really good. We can't just say they're harmless, they're amusing, let's just be tolerant. I think that they require, reasonable, skeptical debunking from people.
Humans, being storytellers, like to graft onto this uncertainty something to explain it. And what that does for the human mind is it puts things into nice, neat little boxes that makes you feel good, like, it's all come together now. Roswell, Area 51, Watergate, and it just sort of gives you this feeling of like, now I understand the world.
There's an incredible gap or schism between the abductees and their supporters and then the debunkers or the scientists who completely dismiss all of their claims and all of their experiences. Now, I don't know whether or not that schism can ever be bridged. I think part of it will have to do with how willing each side is to debate the other one on the other one's own terms.
These experiences teach me, they continue to teach me and affirm for myself that we live in a far richer, deeper, greater, bigger reality universe intelligence than is normally perceived.
From my client's perspective, my goal is to get them to live a normal life. Yes, they've had abduction experiences. It is not going to stop. It's in their life, but they can incorporate those experiences and live a normal life. To the public, I'm hoping that they'll walk away with more of an open mind. I'm not trying to convince anyone, but please open your mind to this.
Until we are better able to understand the mysteries of the mind and the universe, the exact nature of the abduction phenomenon will continue to elude us.
But I can imagine a science in the future where we will really understand our own inner worlds much better, how they're created by the brain, how they're affected by different kinds of hallucinations, different states, and so on. And then we will understand all these experiences as a normal part of the human condition, part of the kind of fantasies and experiences to which we're all prone. We'll accept it as part of our own mind.
Is it possible that this alien represents an alien region of our own mind, one we cannot hope to understand, let alone describe to others?
People want to have and create meaning, whether they create it within their job, within their relationship, or by creating all kind of alternate realities and believing in those alternate realities. It doesn't really matter. I think the basic point is that we're in search of meaning. And once we find meaning, we can be more productive. So we have to be careful that this search for meaning doesn't end up costing more to us than it's benefiting.
I used to get frustrated that people didn't take me serious, that what was happening to me they didn't believe. But I know, and I know for myself what happened.
I don't ever pretend to know the reasons for something that I don't understand. In my point of view, our view of reality is 1 inch on the TV screen of reality.
I just hope it just doesn't happen again. That's just, it's so draining. It is very consuming.
I have a deep conviction about what has happened to me and the reality of it, and I want to know why. Why me? Why am I involved in this?